Go ahead.
Yeah, let's see if it's working now. Just have to mute the.
Oh yeah, we have to mute. What do we have to do? Not show. We have to have no audio like on our other one, right?
On the YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, let me do that. Let me do that. Wait.
So welcome, guys. We're here with Johnny Cirucci and Noonesflower, and we're going to be talking
No one's
about
flower.
No One's Flower. Sorry, I was read your nickname altogether. So we're going to be talking about who's really behind the deception, the heliocentric deception, and some other big deceptions that we have. Is it the Jews? Is it the Jesuits? Who is it? So yeah, welcome, guys.
Hey, Meg, you are the man. You have completely organized this. I really appreciate it. Real quick, so I don't have any issues, we need to mute ourselves on the YouTube. What's the fastest way to do that?
It's just if you have the YouTube tab open, you just go there and mute the sound on the window there.
Oh, got it.
Is mine muted?
Well, you're the only one that can hear it. We can't hear it from here.
Okay.
So if it's not muted, you'll hear an echo.
Okay.
So to start, I just want to say to the listeners first that if you have any questions and you want to ask us, put them in caps lock at the end of the talk. I'll mention it when we're ending or about to end, and we'll try to answer as many questions as you have. So yeah, I would like to have a recap on the connection of the heliocentric deception, Copernicus, Einstein, the Big Bang, evolution, just so people that haven't listened to you can hear from your mouth what you have, what information you have about this deception.
Well, the video that you and I did together is phenomenal. It's certainly one of the most successful things I've ever been a part of, and it really is important. What I'll do is I'll put it in the chat, in the notes. If anybody hasn't seen it yet, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'll put it also in the video description.
Perfect. Yeah, what it does is it explains the background of the issue of changing our cosmology. Now, it has a tremendous amount to do with religion. You don't have to be a Christian to understand it, but the aspect of Roman Catholicism versus Protestant or Reformation or biblical Christianity is the issue. It is the driving force behind why they would change. This is the most important question and answer in this issue. If you're already on board, if you're not on board with the whole issue of how we live in a flat plane of existence, a massive ecosphere, snow globe, whatever you want to call it, you got a lot of catching up to do. There are some questions that we can ask you that you won't have any good answers to if you subscribe to the old school spinning globe Earth, heliocentric, Big Bang, Darwinian dinosaur model. And that's probably why this is such a fast-growing arena for the truth community. By the way, quick aside, I absolutely despise saying truth. We put in the machine puts an ER on us
labels
in order to minimize us, make us sound like tinfoil hat nutters. But the reason why our cosmology was changed is the most important thing, and no one else out there has this for us. And it's a very powerful question. Oh, why would they do that? That makes no sense. The reason is that the issue started really at the cross of Christ. Certainly Christianity is one of the most powerful religions, faiths, pardon me, if not the most powerful to change lives, change people. And that's what Jesus Christ did. And it was a cabal that committed his execution of Jews in leadership with the power and resources of the Roman Empire. And I think it's important to make that statement because that's the root of one of the main points that you wanted to discuss is Jews versus Jesuits. And the issue is a differentiation between just a few key Jews being used and tapping into the power of the Roman Empire, which went underground and now controls from behind the scenes. It is the Holy Roman Empire. I know that technically that's our school teacher can probably tell us that the Holy Roman Empire is a very specific definition, but I like to consider it the religious aspect of the Roman Empire. Rome was in control. Go ahead. You want to jump in, bud?
Yeah, I was just
trying to talk.
Just wanted to start from Copernicus.
Okay, yeah. Let me skip ahead. I'm trying to get too much background.
Yeah, we've talked about it before, but just for people that haven't heard it before, what is the connection? Where's the connection of Copernicus to Jesuits or to the Vatican?
Nora, jump in.
I wanted just to say before we started that I kind of don't agree totally with your theology, Johnny. So just to put a caveat there, I'm not so convinced that the person of Jesus in the Bible really existed as a human man on earth.
No, yeah,
sure.
It's okay if you have a... Go ahead.
So,
that's absolutely okay.
In the course of our conversation, we just start from that starting point, I think.
We've clarified.
Okay.
Most of the issue, though, is from my perspective, the answers I have for us revolves around the battle between the Catholic Empire and their attempt to crush Christianity. As I was very clear in stating before we started, you don't have to be a Christian. But what they did, the reason why is that biblical Christianity destroys Catholic Christianity. It gets rid of the entire power structure of Roman Catholicism. Christ on the cross, according to the Bible, gets rid of the priesthood, the hierarchy. There is absolutely no need for a quote-unquote vicar of Christ on earth, according to biblical Protestant Christianity.
Okay,
there are no go-betweens.
So I love your work because a lot of that idea resonates with me. I just don't see the struggle between the Roman Catholic and the biblical Christianity. I see the struggle, but I ascribe it to different groups.
Well, we are told that the Inquisition was the hunting of witches, but it was from a lot of sources. The evidence points to it being the book burning, the Bible burning, and the burning of
I'm just saying to Johnny beforehand that I see it more as the struggle between the ordinary people who were called the pagans and the Roman Christianity took over from the Zadok-key.
It's not. No. I got to say, it's not Roman Christianity. It's a syncretistic mix of Christian beliefs wrapped in paganism that traces its way through Egypt, through Greece, all the way back to Babylon. It's not Roman Christianity.
Yes.
I want to be very clear.
Okay, Johnny, but I think it's a certain kind of paganism that you see it.
Here's the problem, though. Here's the problem. The Catholic Church did not attack pagans nearly as much as it attacked biblical Christians. There's an entire series of volumes written on it called Fox's Book of Martyrs. There were no major crusades against pagans. There may have been battles against pagan empires up into Europe. Through Germany is the best example of Roman Empire against pagan nations. But the real issue is an issue of ideas and control over the hearts and minds and souls of people, which is why we now have had our cosmology changed. With the advent of the circulation of the Bible and reformers breaking away from the Catholic Church, calling themselves just Christians, and translating the Bible into the common tongue, the Catholic Church buried the Bible, translated into Latin, and forbade the common person from reading it. Because if you were a Christian, the Bible shows you that the Roman Catholic hierarchy and system is both pagan and completely unnecessary. It's a stake into the heart.
Okay, Johnny, I don't want to deflect too much from Mi'kmaq's plan of questioning. I just wanted to say, I know, but I'm in really a lot of agreement with the general thrust of your argument, and the ideological basis of it I'm very in agreement with. I just see history in a different way, and I have a different, I've accumulated a different definition of what paganism is than you have. But that said, sure, let's just finish it there and let Mi'kmaq get on with his question.
Well, yeah, and let me finish, Mig. I'll bring us very as quickly as I possibly can, because honestly, there's a little bit of price to be paid in order to get there. That if you accept the premise that the efforts of the Vatican were to crush this movement and those small numbers of people who were in this Protestant or this breakaway movement of pure Christianity based on the Bible, the Waldensians, Albigensians, and then individuals like John Wycliffe, Jan Hus, William Tyndale, Martin Luther, many others.
Yes.
It promulgated the Bible, and it's with the advent of the movable type printing press, and particularly Martin Luther and his breakaway from the Catholic Church, printing Bibles into the common tongue and disseminating them, that changed everything. That
exactly. And I once you get up to the Reformation and Martin Luther, I'm completely on board with your thinking. I just think that at the time of the first century, a few centuries before Christ and 3 centuries AD, I might be a little bit at odds with your views. But once we get up to the Reformation and the Renaissance, I totally agree. I think that the printing press brought the knowledge of God in a more direct way to the ordinary people, and that's what they were trying to stifle.
We can absolutely have a friendly, amicable debate in a different setting to discuss that too. But it was with the Martin Luther's German Bibles and the printing press for the first time that the fires of the Inquisition could no longer keep up with, just like Meg said, burning Bibles and burning the ability of the common person.
Yeah. So at that point, I think we should just start the conversation from around the Renaissance, because I'm in agreement with you at that
point. Is why the time and date of Copernicus, who was a Vatican mathematician, who was almost certainly a Roman Catholic priest, is so important.
He was on the list, wasn't he? He was on the list of the priests of the Vatican. There was
was he in the Curia?
He was in a Catholic book.
Oh.
Where they would put all the names of the priests. What was it called? We've talked about it before.
A list of priests? What do you mean?
Well, doesn't the Vatican have like every year or every season they print out a book which has a list of most important people in the Vatican?
I don't have that at my fingertips, but I do know that we have listed in our video the fact that the Catholic Encyclopedia admits he was almost certainly spent his entire life unmarried. He was recommended to hold a position of political prominence, and only a Catholic priest could hold. I don't have the details at my fingertips.
Well, he definitely was a curate, and I think he was a Catholic priest, and I have his book right here, The Revolution of the Heavenly Spheres, just in case we need to quote something.
Oh, good. Yeah.
De Revolutionibus Orbium Celestium. And that's the publishing of this work against his will. He did not want it published. That the papal secretary, several other highly placed clergy forced him to publish it. He wanted to wait until his death because he knew that there was issues with this brand new cosmology of heliocentrism that he was promoting. Whether it was guilty conscience, whether it was he didn't believe it himself, he was just putting it out. He knew it was a psyop. 1543 versus Martin Luther's nailing of his 95 Theses on the doors of All Saints Cathedral in Wittenberg, 1517. That is no coincidence.
So you think it was all issued from above that these things come out?
I think it was clearly an agenda by the Catholic Church and the Jesuits from the get-go to discredit the Bible with this dramatically different cosmology, really just to change our very reality in order to go against use a new tactic, as Thomas Wolsey called it, learning against learning, rather than burning Bibles. They couldn't keep up with the distribution of Bibles. The next most important thing was to discredit Bibles, because once you discredit the Bible, the particular flavor of Christianity that Roman Catholicism promotes still requires you to go through the Roman hierarchy, priests, bishops, cardinals, pope.
And that's a very interesting point, the learning against learning, because that was the beginning of what we see now. The gatekeeping and mixing truth with lies. If you can't fight, if you can't burn the books anymore, if it doesn't work, then you have to use another tactic, and that's what they
I think doing. That the tactic they used was to blind people with science, because science was gaining a pace, and so ideas became more complicated. And I just wanted to say about this Copernicus book, which is kind of why I took it out, is that when you read the Revolution of the Heavenly Spheres, he spends very little time indeed, on the world being spherical. And if you've ever listened to any of our million hangouts that we have on Flat Earth debates and Poncho Pete's people before that, and all of these hangouts where they kind of have a go at each other, the Globers come in and have a go, the ones I'm talking about. The proof that Copernicus gives in his opening to the revolutions of the heavenly spheres is just what they say. It's nothing more complicated. The Globers have the same argument as Copernicus, and it has no basis on observation of the lack of curvature on the Earth. And it doesn't take into consideration, he talks about optics, but it doesn't take into consideration the complicated nature of perspective going off in the distance. He talks about the mast of the ship disappearing under the horizon, just like the Globers do today. So I just found it very interesting.
That's an optical illusion.
I just found it very interesting that he was so brief about the world is spherical. The world is spherical is a paragraph this long, and then he means the world, the universe. And then the Earth is spherical lasts for about twice that length. And he just talks about the mast of the ship going down, and a little bit about perspective. And he just sort of shrugs it off and then starts going into about 500 pages of mathematical measurements of the heavens.
So basically, Nora, you're throwing the BS flag on the most important work that first puts us in the heliocentric direction, simply because, exactly as you said, it's not a scientific work.
No, not as far as lack of curvature. And I am throwing the BS flag over it because I read it. I was hoping he was more erudite or really scientific, or even zetetic in the beginning of it. No, not at all. He kind of brushes the whole thing aside, and I think it's because he wants to get to the complicated bit.
And he starts from the point. He starts from the point that it is a globe. He doesn't try to prove it.
It's an assumption.
That's another great tactic, is to begin upon a false assumption without giving your opponents the opportunity to say, wait a minute, I'm not even starting on the same sheet of music as you are. You don't even prove your point. You just assume that it already exists. And that is extremely powerful if you add the normalcy bias, because we've had 500 years of sowing lies and disinformation. You just assume that the lies and disinformation are already correct and go on from there, rather than say, wait a minute, we've been lied to, and therefore we question all assumptions, and we are the true scientists. We rely on our own observations to create our own hypotheses, to be tested in our own experiments, and without that as proof, which I want to say is the best definition of scientism that I've heard. Scientism is promoting false science with the tenets and tracks of religion. You disconnect your brain.
Yes, could I just pick up on that? Because in the world is spherical, which he means, by world he means the universe, the greater, everything that is real. He says, in the beginning we should remark that the world is globe-shaped, whether because this figure is the most perfect of all, as it is an integral whole and needs no joints, or because this figure is the one having the greatest volume and thus is especially suitable for that which is going to comprehend and conserve all things. So basically he's taking it from a religious standpoint where the more perfect forms were considered holy. I think that you always hear these things like the 3 is a perfect number, or just because it is, and this is handed down as a dogma.
Is not science, and no. Instead the basic tenet is, the basic idea, the thrust is trust the expert. Exactly. We'll spin so much BS that you no longer have the ability to follow us, which is exactly what Einstein's theory of relativity was. That it was something that was taking this false reality and backing it up with science speak that the average person would be lost in.
So on the whole, I'm really disappointed with this revolution of the heavenly spheres, because after he just does that little tiny thing that's based on a religious dogma, it's like he's too smart to not know that he's doing this, and he's doing it willingly. And I find that it's deceptive.
You can say the exact same thing about Darwin's evolution of species. Once you examine it for yourself, and you approach it from the perspective of a fellow scientist, or an actual scientist, and you make your own observations, draw your own conclusions, it doesn't hang up. And that's the excellent point of who we are in this community. We are real scientists. We know we've been lied to. We no longer subscribe to the science religion of disconnect our brains and trust the experts. And it's a great point, Nora, that once you actually critically examine what the trusted tomes that they rely upon, De Revolutionibus, On the Origin of Species,
yes,
and it's not a science work, and it doesn't make the case.
And I would recommend to anybody that they read these books and the Darwin, like you say, because some of the criticism that the Flat Earth community is getting from the likes of, let's say, T. Osman, right, is that we, or someone else over there in Australia, is that none of us read books, or that we're getting all of our information on this stuff from an echo chamber of YouTube videos. Yeah. YouTube videos. And they advise us all not to watch YouTube videos. But I think what they're doing is advising us not to communicate between ourselves. And it's not true that all of us neglect to read the books. So I think the more of us that do read the books and have that case to back us up, the better it will go.
Yeah, and I understand the criticism of people that watch YouTube videos, because it's true for some people, you know. They have the choice. You either watch someone on YouTube and then try to verify it for yourself, or you make the choice of believing in that person and not finding out.
Well, this is the thing. I find it very hypocritical of people who start to accuse, like give a blanket accusation that everybody is only getting their information on YouTube videos. I find it hypocritical, because even a library is full of the same type of people as the people who make YouTube videos. A library is a media of information, and they might as well tell us we shouldn't go into libraries and listen to ideas that were given to us in books. So it's hypocritical. There's plenty of perfectly good information coming out on YouTube videos. You just have to discern.
It's nothing more than a cheap shot, Nora. It's just a cheap shot. Information is information.
Exactly, and that's just what I wanted to say for those people if they're watching. So that's all.
The vast majority of people have lives. Even we have lives. We have to work. We have to pay our bills. We're not like the big names in alternative media that get paid for blowing smoke. So people come out of their lives. They have a few minutes to investigate, to ask questions. The quickest, easiest way is to watch a video. Information is information, and that's another excellent point, Nora, is that there have been some really shoddy books that were written. Just because it's a book doesn't mean it's better information than, say, a YouTube video. Information is information, and that's why it's a cheap dodge. You don't address the actual points. You just say, well, the source is silly. Why would you get why would you take the fact that the sun and moon absolutely look the same size, and experts tell us the sun just happens to be 400 times bigger, and just by coincidence happens to be 400 times further away? Now, why would you take that from a YouTube video? I would expect you to need to read that from a book. What's the difference? It's an excellent question. Forget the source, answer the question. They don't have an answer for the question, and so they mock
to attack the source. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So, what connection does Einstein have with the Jesuits or the Vatican?
Certainly, he was used powerfully as a tool. I like to bring it all back, and I'm not gonna do this again to us. But real quick, I want to say where this tactic came from. The suppression of the Templars. The Templars were the most powerful. They're basically the Jesuits of their age, the special forces for the Vatican of their time. They invented banking, not the Jews. The Templars invented usury banking. There was a constant battle between royalty, kings, queens, and the Vatican. The Vatican controlled whole nations, and whenever kings wanted to do anything, they had to ask permission. Well, it was with Philippe le Bel, Philip IV of France, that for the first and only time that I'm aware of, that a nation and a king tried to get the upper hand over Rome and moved the Vatican to Avignon in France for a period of about 70 years and kept the popes in his back pocket. Now, he knew that was only part of the problem. He needed to take out their knights, the Vatican special forces. And so he used the fact that there were rumors about perverse sexual things going on, Gnosticism, issues, abuse of power. The Templars at this time in the 1300s were more powerful than many nations in their day. And so Philippe le Bel exploited these rumors and the fact that he had the Pope Clement V in his back pocket, and used the situation to suppress the Templars, hunt them down, torture them for information, and kill them. And then many went underground and ended up in Switzerland as a result, which is why Switzerland has such a special status to this very day, particularly for banking. But as a result of using the names and faces of Templars to hunt them down, the powers in Rome realized they could never again conduct their machinations with their own faces and names. They needed scapegoats, and they found scapegoats in Jews. The sick part is they found Jews willing to betray even their own people as long as they got theirs, as long as they were able to get promoted and placed in key positions. And so this has been the common tactic ever since then, to take Jews and put them in key positions. And that's what Einstein was and was a Jewish storyteller, fabricator, put in a key position to weave this web of lies. And I love to use the example of his good friend, George Lamite. It's hard to pronounce his name properly. The Jesuit-trained Catholic priest who invented the Big Bang. Exactly. Worked hand in hand. You have some great pictures that you brought up in our video of the two of them together. So I think that's a great connection, and it explains why he continues to hold the position that he does. Where do we get the knowledge that we have of Einstein? we can't read most of the stuff that he's written ourselves because it's just spinning you round and round. We have movies like Close Encounters, where Steven Spielberg represents talks about Einstein and says, "Oh, Einstein was so brilliant, he might have been an alien." That's where we get our. And how much of this is a great point if we want to go into this. How much of our reality is bolstered by Hollywood? How much of our knowledge of space and aliens and space travel and Einstein and key figures do we get from the silliness of movies?
Exactly.
Yes.
I would say
if we didn't have Hollywood, people wouldn't believe in aliens.
And Hollywood is classically known for being largely Jewish.
Yeah,
which is also substitution, and it is. The Jews they've been put in key positions because they toe the line very obediently. But in reality, above them are the Knights of Malta, Romans, and Jesuits in key positions. Great example is this latest movie, Silence, that Scorsese made about Jesuits. The Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson, devout Jesuit-trained Roman Catholic. Think of all all the problems that were, how much that stayed in the headlines, and how they supposedly beat Mel Gibson down. It was actually a Jesuit that helped him write that movie. The reality is the key positions of power. The Romans allow Jews to run areas like Hollywood and so forth, at least in the spotlight. Behind the scenes, they have total control. A silly example that I like to use is a TV show that we've played a lot at the house. Everybody Loves Raymond. TV show. It's funny, and we play it in the background as background music. It is a great example of a combination of Jews and Roman Catholics. And if you know anything about that story, Ray's brother Robert has this girlfriend that runs through the entire series, that she's in her 30s and she's a virgin because she was born and raised by very devout Protestant Christians that the show continues to make fun of throughout the length of 9 seasons. That may not be a substantive example. That's just something I pull out on the top of my head. But the key positions of power are held almost always by Roman Catholics or Jesuit-trained Roman Catholics, and they're usually right behind. For instance, Barack Obama is about to get out of office, or Barack Obama or Joe Biden. And of the two of them, who had the stronger hand in being raised a devout Roman Catholic? Doesn't matter. Barack Obama was taught how to be a community organizer by a Jesuit named Greg Galuzzo in Chicago. But that just made him a good puppet. He couldn't even go to talk to 6th grade kids without a teleprompter. Joe Biden swore in the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, who was a Jesuit-trained Roman Catholic, John O. Brennan, the drone executioner. That tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, you continually put these really well-documented examples of this sort of thing in your book, Johnny. And the Biden is a good example. For example, Time Warner. This is something I don't know. Time Warner is a really huge owner of some of the media, right? Takes a big chunk. There's supposed to be 4 or 5 corporations that own all the mainstream media, right? Do you know, for example, anyone at the top of Time Warner who is either a Roman Catholic or a Jewish person answering to a Roman Catholic?
I don't have the details. I have not looked. If I take the time to look, I'm sure it would be there. But Hollywood is not nearly as critical as the CIA. Hollywood is not nearly as critical as the NSA, which is based.
No, in fact, they have them on as part of movie writing. There's a part.
Exactly.
There's a room in the Department of Defense that deals exclusively with their liaisons with Hollywood.
The myth makers. It's not nearly as important as the stick that they use for the police state. For instance, the FBI, the CIA, 2 of the most powerful institutions anywhere, not just in America, anywhere, founded by Roman Catholics, today run by Roman Catholics. And I like to use that as an example. The FBI was founded by devout Roman Catholic Charles Joseph Bonaparte, great-grandnephew of Napoleon Bonaparte, and is run today by devout Roman Catholic James Comey, who says that Hillary Clinton did nothing wrong when she used a private email server to conduct her business as Secretary of State.
Yes,
Email
and
server.
this is a part of the whole history of the CIA that really makes me squirm, because you do hear people saying it's the Jews all the time, and okay, the Jews figure largely in furthering the cause of the New World Order, etc. But there are so many Irish Catholic names running through the CIA and the powerful parts of like Washington, D.C. You always find them, and I find it kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part that everybody seems to miss, or not everybody, but the most popular conspiracy people never mention.
Yes, it's less mentioned, and I don't know why. And I always wondered, I would look into things that came up about the Protocols of Zion and the CIA during the time when 9/11 was in focus, and I would always find, oh no, Orion, a Carol, all of these Irish names.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned the Protocols of Zion, we can talk about that a bit if you guys want. So the author of that book was a Jesuit, or?
I have no idea, Johnny.
I have that information. I'm trying to add something. Oh, finally, this computer is working really slow. There are so many. We'll get to Protocols of Zion in a second. I have the data on that. I just have to look it up in my files.
All right. There's another researcher called the Juggler 66. He has a video that I re-uploaded about the Protocols of Zion, and he mentions the connection with the Vatican, and that they have a Catholic magazine where they actually published the Protocols of Zion.
I heard that too. I also heard in another source that it was somebody's, maybe it was a Jesuit source, somebody is accusing the Russian secret police of having promulgated it. But not of, like, they didn't say who wrote it. They just said that they put it out and it was a hoax. But
yeah.
Apparently, I'm not allowed to add an email, a hyperlink into the chat. You're going to have to do it, Meg. I put it in our Hangouts, the address of the Catholic Herald embarrassedly admits exactly what you said, Nora. There are so many Roman Catholics. Even if you put aside the number of directors from the very beginning, Walter Bedell Smith, Army General, I think was the first director of the CIA. The CIA was founded by a Knight of Malta, devout Roman Catholic, William Donovan, who was given the Order of St. Sylvester by Hitler's Pope Pius XII in 1944 for his service to Rome. The number of Roman Catholic directors, Casey, Colby, a very large number.
Casey is the one I was thinking of.
Even more so are the number of key positions held in the CIA by Catholics or Jesuit-trained Catholics. So many so that the Catholic Herald, and this is the link I gave you, Meg, if you want to put it in the YouTube version of what we're doing. Catholic Herald. Why Catholics thrive in the CIA. The agency has been dubbed, quote, Catholics in action because the faithful have occupied so many senior positions. And then we stop and say, now, here, who is, and particularly in America, who has done more harm to America than any other threat anywhere, and that is the Central Intelligence Agency. Central Intelligence Agency bringing in drugs, dumping drugs on America's streets. Clearly, the machine that murdered a sitting president, John F. Kennedy, conducted a military coup in broad daylight, kidnapping Americans.
And don't forget to add. Oh, sorry, Nick.
Go ahead.
Don't forget to add Johnny, that the cozy relationship of the Bushes with popes and Catholics, they do kind of rub each other's backs, don't they?
Yeah, every year they have like
reference-
a party, right? Or they get together to the Jesuit party.
And the Bushes and Trump, they like to get together with the Jesuits, don't they?
George Walker is the man, the maternal grandfather of I think Prescott, the maternal great grandfather of George Herbert Walker Bush. George Walker Bush was educated by the Jesuits at Stonyhurst in England. They are the secret Jesuits, and I love to reference this book, Compromised by Terry Kent Reed, on how CIA cocaine running built the Bush and Clinton administrations, fabricated the presidencies of those families. How we had George Walker Bush was a follow-on to Bushes as president, because in a country of 300 million people, we couldn't find anybody better to be president than the son of a former CIA director, both of them members of Skull and Bones. Are you kidding me? I love to reference the 2004. No, I forget the election between Kerry and George W. Bush. Both of them were Skull and Bones, and the mathematical possibility of that being a coincidence is
no. I always considered that just two buddies having a joke.
Exactly, it's always a joke. All of the elections at that level is a joke. Yeah. Even the last one that we had of Trump and Hillary, they're all buddies and pals. I've got a picture of how Paul Ryan is in a quote unquote argument with Nancy Pelosi about this big budget fight they're going to have. And they're both devout Roman Catholics. Nancy Pelosi laughs on the hard left side of the spectrum. Paul Ryan laughs on the fake right side of the spectrum. John Boehner, Jesuit-trained Roman Catholic, gave Nancy Pelosi a big kiss when she handed the gavel over. The last three speakers have been Jesuit-trained Roman Catholics, at least devout Roman Catholics. I'm not quite sure as far as the Jesuit lineage of Paul Ryan, but he's a devout Roman Catholic, former altar boy. It's a big joke. Doesn't matter what party, doesn't matter what they say. It's the Hegelian dialectic that Mig mentioned. They own both sides, and as long as they get us to fight over stupid things, over emotional things where we disconnect our brains, over racism, X or Jews, or prejudice against Muslims, there is no such thing.
Different religious doctrines, they have us fight over.
There's no such thing. You bet. That's the top of their list. All you have to do is watch quote unquote mainstream news to see all the silly things that were held in front of us like a red cape at a bullfight. To be distracted by. None of them have any substance to them. There's no such thing as an Islamic terrorist threat that wasn't completely fabricated by the intelligence community. In this order: CIA, MI6, and Mossad, as well as other European intelligence agencies. And unfortunately, I hate to admit this, that the Russian intelligence agencies are not too far behind as part of the problem.
So, to bring it back to the Jesuits then, I've been researching Jesuits in the main Jesuit library here in Ireland. And I was kind of inspired to do this because of your work, Cirucci, because it had so many historical references. And I have a friend who we'll call Bill, who is a Jesuit, and he got me a membership into that library. So I've been going. It's a beautiful library, it has all these wonderful old books. It's like being in Harry Potter or something. It's very romantic, and it has arches, and it has ancient books that'll fall apart if you touch them. And I'm a bit of a bibliophile, so I love that place. So I kind of have to thank Bill for that. But that said, there are shelves and shelves of books dealing with the order and their involvement in worldly affairs. and how it relates to what they call their idea of theology. I don't want to go too far off point. Their idea of theology and method in theology, the Jesuits always connect theology to having an effect in the world. And to that end, to have an effect on history, an effect in the world affairs. And to that end, they encourage deceit and lying and just machinations behind the scenes. And they positively encourage it in their books, which are connected to the spiritual exercise of Saint Ignatius Loyola, right in the middle of how they're learning how to lead a perfect life and to be very spiritual, and I don't know, I think they were even into self-flagellation back in the day, like Opus Dei. But in the middle of all of those descriptions of how you should live, they also put a little caveat, but you should lie in the right circumstances, and if you have to get into this country, you should use deceit, and you should wheedle old ladies out of their life savings. They actually promote dishonest behavior, which would tie in very well to how the CIA took so much out of their modus operandi.
It's right out of the fourth oath of induction, the Jesuit blood oath, that says you will do anything and everything necessary to further the agenda of the society, the so-called Society of Jesus, the Company of Loyola, to include, another great source on this is Helena Blavatsky, who admits openly, that these are at the highest levels, these people stop at nothing. Sexual perversion, murder, overturning of nations. And that's why the Jesuits have been kicked out of every single nation they've ever had a mission to, is because the power structure in that country realized, even in Catholic nations, that they were being subverted, murdered, overturned by Jesuits. And a great example of this is what do kids do? This is how much they control information. They control the debate. When the kids want to fight the machine and go out and protest, what do they put on to protect? They put on a Guy Fawkes mask. Guy Fawkes is a Jesuit assassin.
That's true, yeah. And it's very interesting, the Guy Fawkes mask. I feel like it was a social engineering experiment in seeing how many people could
promoted by Hollywood.
Put on this. Yeah, I think so.
Too bad that I think the Wachowski brothers were probably too close to the truth. Between V for Vendetta and The Matrix, they were both convinced to voluntarily retire their genders. I'm absolutely convinced that some kind of technology was used to torture them and make them both become women as punishment for the fact that they got too close to the truth with those two movies.
Just a moment, you carry on. I have to do something.
So, one thing that I wanted to talk about is what other truthers say about the Jesuit conspiracy, that it's all controlled by Jews, and that it's not the Jesuits that have been kicked out of most countries, that it's the Jews that have been kicked out of most countries. And this is something that I've heard a long time ago when I started researching conspiracies, that I always heard this. So,
sorry, I had to put on the heat. It is freezing.
So what can you tell us about that? The Jews being kicked out of countries?
That argument is another baseless subterfuge that is used as a smokescreen, devoid of facts. I've heard people say Loyola was a Jew. The Jews have secret control of the Vatican. You can look. You're a Jew. Wait, I'm Jewish. No, Nora is Jewish. I know it's because anybody that has red hair is Jewish. You can make up any ridiculous way of slanting someone's bloodline because there's no facts involved. There's no easy way to discern that. Go with the facts.
Yeah, you have
Who
this idea of the
controls-
crypto Jew coming out, so everyone becomes a Jew all of a sudden.
You can throw that at anyone, and it requires no backing, no backup. It is a great subterfuge and smokescreen because there's no way to either prove or disprove it. When in what we were just talking about a few minutes ago, that really matters. Who holds the positions of critical importance in the European Union, in America, in the intelligence agencies? They are Knights of Malta, usually Jesuit-trained Roman Catholics. The past two chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff have both admitted that they are Irish Roman Catholics. Martin Dempsey, Army General, was the previous Pentagon Joint Chief of Staff head. Joseph Dunford, the current chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Irish Catholic, Jesuit trained at Georgetown. Names and places and facts are what matter, not someone throwing out some ridiculous subterfuge that calls it. And that's the other thing as far as this, it's the Jews racism. Okay, great. You know what? I admit it. It's the Jews. Give me your solution. Wipe out all the Jews?
As far as calling Irish people Jews, there is one guy who was an Irishman who was the president of Israel, though, Chaim Herzog. He lived right down the street here. He was raised by a.
He lived down the street. He's your uncle, isn't he?
No, but he was
Jewish.
There is a connection between Zionism projects and the Irish for some reason.
If you were a Roman in power and you knew that this was your most powerful deception, you would actively weave it every chance. Friends, family, anytime you could empower a Jew to do your bidding, you absolutely would do it and grab them and shove them out first. Mark Zuckerberg, what do you think is most important, to run the CIA or run Facebook?
Well, one could say that you are racist or anti-Semite if you start to say, oh, the Jews are so docile and they're so obedient and that they're only doing, like, they're following orders. But so I want to kind of avoid that. I just would like to.
What I'm saying is that I don't say anything where I paint with a broad brush an entire race of people. I say that key individuals that happen to have a Jewish lineage, background, name, whatever, those are the worms who do what they're told because they have been empowered. Mark Zuckerberg, hey buddy, I'm going to make you a big fat target with a Jew name for people to hate and despise. You're going to make, what does he make now? What does he have? What's his net worth? Do you think Zuckerberg would do absolutely everything he's told to make the money that he has now? That's a perfect example of.
Well, I think that
worms.
part of it is that everybody has their price, and some people will do anything for a buck. But I also think that I think it's more class distinctions than any ever group religions or race distinctions that causes the evils in the world. And I think that the reason Catholics and Jewish people are coming, they appear in positions where they promote these evil things. Okay, sorry if I'm not speaking very well, but I think it's because the rich families of the world are able to draw on organized religions where people have been predisposed to be docile and to follow orders and to accept the words of the priests or the scientists. They're already obedient not because they're one religion or another one or a race or another one. Because they're in an organized religion that suppresses their individuality.
And they grew up like that.
Yes. So that's why you have Jews becoming like these huge Zionist puppets who like Spielberg who do all of the bidding of the elite, and they promote all of their, because they were raised in an environment which didn't allow them to think critically for themselves and question for themselves. They were raised in an organized religion that had priests.
That's one of their main objectives. It doesn't matter who you are, what race you are. What they want is control. So if to control people, they have to control you from birth. That's why they have a lot of Roman Catholic churches building schools and controlling schools.
Yes.
Catholic
So
schools.
if you want social engineering, one of the best ways to get it is to have a lot of religions that teach the kids from the age of 5.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is an excellent point, Nora, as far as controlling people. And I, as a born again Christian, Protestant Christian, am the biggest enemy of organized religion. That's an excellent point. There are few ways that are easier to control human beings than with the structure and hierarchy of religion. And a great example is Henry VIII and his quote-unquote break from the Catholic Church. He didn't break from the Catholic Church. He retained the hierarchy of priests, bishops, and cardinals and just made a Church of England, which is the offshoot of the Catholic Church, which is why it's so easy to turn Anglicans back to Roman Catholicism, is because there's so little difference. And why John Knox was a harsh critic of Henry VIII and his Anglican movement, because it wasn't real Christianity. It just maintained the structure for control of people. And that's exactly what religion does. It encourages people to meet in a sacred place and to compartmentalize their faith for an hour on Sunday morning versus allowing their faith to change their lives and to live it. It has a nice little compartmentalization, particularly in the Catholic faith, where you have to earn your salvation by serving the Pope. That, by the way, is why it's so dangerous. Not every Catholic serves Rome to the point of being a traitor against the best interests of their nation. However, everyone who is Catholic in a key position, I'm convinced, has been turned to do so, because you always have that loyalty issue to the Catholic Church, to the Pope. Do I want to go to heaven, or do I want to serve my nation? And that's why it's so powerful and so easy to turn someone in a key position who is Catholic. Don't even have to be a practicing Catholic. You just be born and raised Catholic, like Sarah Palin, like Ronald Reagan, these anchors of the so-called right-wing conservative movement in America that have a hidden Catholic background that the church pulls upon. Mike Pence, our new vice president, born and raised devout Roman Catholic that suddenly rebranded himself to be quote-unquote Christian. The mechanisms of control that you mentioned, Nora, and I think it's a great point.
Yeah.
So about the Jewish conspiracy, Israel is in the center of this theory. Have you researched who really owns Jerusalem and who is in control of Israel?
These facts up. Guy that did great work on this. I actually have some of these stories. Barry Shamish did excellent work. Unfortunately, he passed recently. On how Rome, that secretly controls Jerusalem, that controls the portions of the Temple Mount, and I'm scrolling through his right now.
It would be interesting.
One of their.
Sorry. It would be interesting.
Go ahead. Go.
It would be interesting if you could show me a viable proof that they had something to do with Israel, because I feel like I do know that they had a hand in starting Islam. The Jesuits did.
Yeah, with
Go ahead.
with Mohammed going to the cave and everything.
Yeah.
Just like the Ignatius Loyola.
So it would
And,
make sense if they were trying to promote other religions in all places to create division.
Don't have to have founded every other religion. They simply have to, and this is what they do. They're not so powerful that they can forge their tools from scratch. They wait until something is seen to be
Yes.
powerful.
And then they foment it, and they socially engineer it, and they drive it towards their own aim.
You bet. You bet.
And I don't know where I've heard this from anymore, but it was some time ago. I heard that Netanyahu is actually Polish, and there's a huge connection of the Catholic Church, the Jesuits in Poland.
That is an excellent point that is thoroughly bolstered by Perez. Shimon Peres was forget which number of leaders of Israel, prime minister, I forget which one he was, but Barry Chamish mentions, he says, in 1979, Yitzhak Rabin published his autobiography with one line and offbeat quote: "Unlike all Jewish children growing up in Poland, Shimon Peres spent his early education at a Jesuit school." It was absolutely correct. Perez Shimon, it's not his real name, actual name. They changed it. They took a Polish Jesuit educated Jew and made him their toy, and that is a great proof of how.
So you're breaking up a bit. Let's see if he comes back.
Did we lose Johnny? I'm asking chat.
In Afghanistan,
sorry, can you
working
repeat?
with a guy that sure looks a lot like Osama bin Laden.
Can you repeat, because you were frozen for
I'm sorry,
10 seconds.
Real quick, and I'll try to pull up Shimon. But Shimon Peres is a educated Pole, which bolsters how he was completely rebranded. And I'm sorry if I'm going to slow down. I'm trying to minimize the work that my computer is doing. Shimon Peres, it's not even his real name. He is a great example, a Catholic power in Poland creating tools. Zbigniew Brzezinski is another example. The guy who was the national security advisor. His name, Perez's original name is Persky. Mm-hmm. He's a Pole that was educated by the Jesuits. Brzezinski is the guy that created Al Qaeda.
Yes, he was in Afghanistan training the troops single-handedly, like he was there. And but did you say that Zbigniew Brzezinski was Catholic or Jewish? Which is he?
Brzezinski is a devout Roman Catholic, still alive today, like the ring wraith that he is. Devout Roman Catholic.
I read his book, what's it called? The Grand Chessboard. And I was always confused at that time about how this guy was following what I considered to be the Zionist project. And yet I didn't think he was Jewish.
We just fell into your example that you were looking for, a devout Roman Catholic who actively supports Zionism because it is a massive deception, smokescreen, Hegelian dialectic. What better way to distract good people than to say, you jump, and this is why they do this. Every time we try to make a point, a troll will jump up and say, it's the Jews. And you immediately disconnect your brain. You pull in emotional loves and hatreds that have nothing to do with facts. And people on the right say, I love Israel. I want the Jews to rule the world. And people, I won't even say on the left, people against the Jews are furious, and they say, the poor Palestinians, Jews rule the world. We hate the Jews. Way to destroy a good fact-based debate than to throw in a racist issue.
Yes,
like
racism
Israel
and emotionality. And there's a strong pro-Palestinian push in Ireland, which I find really strange as well. But I can see it in this context where it's just to deflect the fact that a lot of our leaders are on board with the American or the Zionist project, and they'll lap up anything that comes out of America, mainstream media, which is Zionist and which is, the mainstream, and yet we have a really strong pro-Palestinian movement going on here that I think is also one of those type of protest movements that gets pushed by George Soros, where everybody gets out at once. And
it's a good example of Hegelian dialectic.
Yes, it happens all the time in Ireland for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is absolutely a Hegelian dialectic. A great example is Yasser Arafat, who many believe was a...
It froze again.
Oh, we lost Johnny again. I wonder what he was about to say. Yasser Arafat, who was...
Let's see if he comes back. We'll wait a second.
An agent, maybe he was about to say. I wonder if he's just going to
lose. While he's disconnected or something, we can address the point of why does it matter who is pulling the strings? Why does it matter if it's the Jews or the Jesuits?
I always wonder about this question. I'm a very practical person when I explore conspiracy theories and conspiracies that the evil people do. And I think I want to keep it less airy-fairy than a lot of people do. Like, I don't want to just do conspiracy theories because, aliens are out there, or, just to be weird. I see it as a really practical political issue because unfair things are being done, and the things that we make these conspiracy theories about, which are rightly called conspiracy theories because they're theories about conspiracies, like chemtrails, 9/11, and all these things, they're actually crimes. They're just crimes. You wouldn't want people living in your community who would do these things. So to me, the question of who done it, who did these things, is very important. And I think that they should be held to account. And I think in a very real sense, they should be held to account in a court of law for doing a chemtrail project or for doing 9/11. I know we have no hope of getting them into a jail, but I'm not for this whole thing where conspiracy theory is just an activity, a hobby. My idea is that we're calling people to account, and therefore, to answer your question, it's good to know who's pulling the strings because they're at the root of why these things happened.
Yeah, and we have to address the cause, not the symptom. I like to compare it to the pharmaceutical industry. They want us to focus on the symptoms. For example, cancer. They want us to focus on killing the cancer and not what made the cancer.
Exactly. And if you eradicate the root cause, you will stop the problem.
Yeah, and that's what they don't want.
You can get into many layers and many rabbit holes about what exactly is behind the root cause. But I think ultimately it might be supernatural. The people who are doing these pathological, psychopathic actions are human beings, but they might be influenced by supernatural whatever. But still, we're in the world, and if we want a better world, which I think some of us do, you can hold those people to account. And that's why we tend to want to trace the money trail up to the top, or to find out who did it, or is it the Jews, or is it them, or is it this one or that one who did it?
Yeah, because how can you fight something that you're not seeing? And
yeah, it's like beating in the dark, like try to fight in the dark if you don't know who did it. And somebody did do it. Somebody did do 9/11. It's not just the archons or an alien. Somebody human had to organize the media to put those images on.
It's also like the allegory cave.
Yeah.
We have everyone watching shadows, and nobody's noticing behind them who is actually creating the shadows.
Yeah. So I know it's very inflammatory to say these things. Some people don't want you to. Some people want to say, don't be negative, especially New Agers. They'll say, don't be negative. You don't want to have negative thoughts. Just send love and light to whoever did these things, Send love and light to the guy in the chemtrail plane while he poisons you with metals and gives you asthma. I'm not like that. I feel like, is my government allowing them to spray my skies without my permission? And I just get upset about it and I say to my government, I don't want that to happen. It's practical.
Yeah, and about those people that only want to focus on the positive, you have to have balance in everything. You have to address the bad things, and also don't forget about the good things, because if you only go to one side, you're handicapped, whatever side it is, positive or negative.
Exactly, and you are going to feel more positive if you're not breathing aluminum every day.
Exactly, because it affects everything. Affects emotion, affects your body. Yeah. So welcome back, Johnny. We had you frozen here for a bit, but seems to be working now.
Everything got shut down.
It's all right. You're back. That's what's important.
Welcome back.
Trying to pull up the YouTube again. Yeah. So I don't even get me back on track where we're at, guys.
So you were mentioning Brzezinski, and then
no, Yasser Arafat, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, my point was how leaders that supposedly promote the best interests of the Palestinian people don't. That there's no substantive advances made for the Palestinians. The Pete article that I have archived, I have to pull it up, how Arafat and the PLO continued to make bad decisions that maintained Palestinians in their temporary camps to live lives of misery. That was what promoted the conflict more. They have absolutely nothing to do with the best interests of the Palestinian people. Those poor people are tools. Muslim immigrants in Europe are tools. Roman Catholic, Hispanic, illegal immigrants in America are tools. They're used by a Satan-worshiping machine to continue to have people get up to, pardon me. Donald Trump rode the illegal immigration issue into the White House. It was done by generations of Roman Catholic traitor tools in America who are making regular citizens furious over the fact that the borders remain open, pure full-on treason to have this security issue, this immigration issue. Doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat, generations. Ronald Reagan on the one side, any number of presidents who have continued, any number of representatives who continue to promote wide open borders, no matter how much it hurts the country, is because it's a doctrine of warfare, of conquest being done to anger the population. You get the population furious at its leaders, and then you present the fraud solution, the puppet hero who is going to do your bidding once the people are totally fed up. And that's a great example of Donald John Trump, Jesuit educated at Fordham University, and his little boy Eric Trump, who all 4 years at Jesuit Georgetown. He's on the Georgetown School of Business. So it is a tactic of control to get people angry over things that either have no solution or the people in power do not offer solutions to.
Exactly, and it's just like entertainment. They keep you focused on the problem, and you don't even have time to do anything else because you have the job, you have your kids. You can't do well. At least you think that you can't do. That's one of the things also. But they keep you very dependent on the system, so you don't have a way to fight.
Johnny, did you look a lot into the aspect? Is Johnny still there?
I think we lost him again. Did we?
I think he's got a bad connection.
All right, I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah, I apparently I can't keep the YouTube up at the same time the Hangout is going, so I just closed it out. I can't participate in the darn thing anyway.
Okay, can I ask you a question, Johnny? If you're there,
okay.
Did you do you look much into the connection between the Jesuits and social engineering in general? Like,
Yes.
I mean, you do. Your whole book is based on it, really. But
the time
like
is
some recent things. I found out some recent things since I've been going to the library there, the Jesuit library, and looking into the shelves about Jesuits per se, right? And they seem to have a lot of money to put into little projects and associations and institutions all over Ireland and Dublin. They have this thing called the Jesuit Center for Faith and Justice, and they liaise with the police. They liaise with the police and the prison, and they're located really near the prison to guide the youth. They have a youth reach center, and they have a support group for the criminals who come out of the place, out of the Mountjoy jail. And it looks like just helping people, but the literature that they have and the slant of it sounds to me like typical social engineering and getting people who are down to go with your agenda. Do you know any? I mean, do you have a lot of information about that kind of thing, Johnny?
It is absolutely the Jesuits' expertise and stronghold to be the organizers behind unrest. It's another Hegelian example of being in bed, in league with the evil 0.001% who infuriate the people and then take the anger of the people and use that to their advantage in doing things that actually are harmful to the people. The best example is Jesuits created communism.
Yeah, this is another one that I've been noticing, because my friends who are Jesuits always have a very pro-communist leaning, but they will claim to be against communism as it was in the Soviet Union, because at that time they had to go in as underground spies and act like maybe they had to act like they were Russian Orthodox or something to infiltrate into Russia and do their missionary work or whatever it was. But
just like in universities now, all the students they worship Karl Marx.
Yes, but the general how do I say, his politics are very my Jesuit friend Bill, his politics are really communism.
The Jesuits own communism. The Jesuits were a home. They were suppressed just like the Templars, and I know that he makes a case in his book Rulers of Evil. I don't know if that it's on my shelf. I have a digital copy, that it was actually self-inflicted because the Lorenzo Ricci, who was the superior general at the time, was just an evil genius who probably looked back upon the Templars and saw the Obi-Wan Kenobi effect of the Templars. If you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you could possibly imagine. That's pretty much what we had, is the Templars going underground. The Jesuits went underground to be suppressed in 1773 and came back in 1814 more powerful than ever, because people felt sorry for them. During the time of their suppression, guess where they ended up?
Where?
Courtesy of Catherine the Great. And
Okay.
in Russia, they built the stepping stones against the Romanovs that would create the so-called Red Revolution of 1917.
And so here we have another point at which this, like the Mi'kmaq's question comes up. How a lot of people would blame Bolshevism on the Jews. They say it was a Zionist thing or a Jewish thing.
Of course, because they used Jews in key positions like Trotsky. One of my favorite examples is Joseph Stalin. There was a fantastic series of articles up on the internet that was titled One Evil. And it was taken down, surprise, surprise, and explains how Stalin is another example of a Jew who was used by Rome. Stalin's real name, Joseph Drushkashvili, actually means of the Jewish people, and yet he was educated at a supposedly Orthodox seminary in Tiflis. Emil Cohen, I believe, is the name of the author that uncovered that in a personal interview with Stalin himself, how Stalin admits that he was becoming a Jesuit priest at this Orthodox in Tiflis, Georgia. They purposefully picked someone that was a double outsider, had a Jewish background, who was a Georgian and not a Russian. If you look up the death toll, communist governments have murdered far more. Who is the epitome of evil? The epitome of evil is Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany. The reason for that is that the Jesuits write the history books, and they want the birthplace of the Protestant Reformation to forever be punished. That's Germany. But between Stalin, Mao Zedong, and many other communist despots, communism in the hands of governments has slaughtered far more. Mao Zedong has murdered so many, they don't even know. From 60 to 100 million Chinese. Absolutely sickening.
Yeah, they blew the water out of the 6 million with the communism deaths. But I would also, you say that the Jesuits want to lay the blame on the door of Germany and Hitler and the Nazis because of the Reformation, but aren't they known to have had a cozy relationship with the Third Reich anyway? Well, it was kind of back and forth. They had some Jesuits who were being suppressed or put in camps, and then they had this warm relationship with the Vatican, didn't they?
They didn't have a warm relationship, Nora. They created the Third Reich. They owned the Third Reich. Eugenio Pacelli, who was Pope during World War II, was papal nuncio to Germany to World War II in the 20s and 30s. He helped fabricate the Nazi movement as punishment against the German people.
They say that Joseph Goebbels was a student of the Jesuits. Was he?
He was, and Heinrich Himmler was also another Roman Catholic trained by Jesuits. There are some sources that say he was a Jesuit priest. That I have sources in my book that explain how both Himmler and Hitler actively patterned their structures after the Jesuits because they knew no better example of leadership and hierarchy that worked.
Yeah, they patterned their secret police, which and their secret service. So, wouldn't that be a precursor of the what is it, the OSC and the CIA in America?
It absolutely was.
And actually,
why?
And actually, Hitler only rose to power because of the support of the Vatican, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that is
I brought that up just because I find it kind of confusing that a lot of the Catholics will claim that Catholics went to the camps or that they were oppressed during these times. So I don't know how that happened if they were really being driven by the Vatican.
Behind it, there are no facts behind it. Another great name to look up is Franz von Papen, Pappen. He was a powerful Roman Catholic German aristocrat who ensured the rise of the Nazi Party. Hitler. Bernard Stampfel is the Jesuit who wrote Mein Kampf. Rabid Jew-hating Jesuit who wrote Mein Kampf for Hitler.
So how do you know what is the proof that a Jesuit wrote Mein Kampf for Hitler? What is your basis for that? I haven't read that part.
Give me.
You write very long books, Johnny.
Hang on.
Well, while we try to find that, I'll just remind that if you guys in the chat, if you have any questions, just put them in caps lock, and I'll start by gathering them, so we can start answering questions in 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Johnny has a wealth of information.
Here's one of my several sources.
Okay.
Otto Strasser, Strasser, was a key figure in the Nazi Party of the 1930s. This is Illuminati Unmasked. 96. Otto Strasser wrote his expose on Hitler. And the title of his expose was Hitler and I. And Strasser is one of the guys who says that Bernard Stampfel, and I'll get you the spelling on his name, so heavily edited and ghost wrote Mein Kampf that he's actually just the author.
Stampfel.
Yes. Now, Stampfel is the actual Jesuit. His name is spelled in English Aefle, Bernard, a Jesuit priest who wrote really vicious anti-Jewish articles in the anti-Semitic magazine Maisbacher Anzeiger. So he was a Jesuit writer who had the ability to put all this together for a puppet like Adolf Hitler.
So they were just trying to mix things up.
Exactly what they were doing, and trying to use this example of this Hegelian dialectic of it's the Jews to anger the German people for how they had been impoverished as a result of the work of Catholic leaders in league with non-Catholic Freemasons. Germany into the ground through World War I and into the end of World War I. The Versailles Treaty purposefully guaranteed World War II would come around because basically it was just another war, 30 years war. I've got a clip from a video on how Leon Panetta of Defense, former director of the CIA, former Bill Clinton chief of staff, Jesuit-trained devout Roman Catholic Leon Panetta called the War on Terror a 30 Years' War. Everybody ever heard of the 30 Years' War? 30 Years' War goes back to Europe in the Middle Ages, of the first time in human history where Protestants attempted to overthrow militarily Catholic power in their own nation. So that's why would Leon Panetta characterize the War on Terror as another 30 Years' War? Because it was a method of control that the Catholic Church is at the top of the pyramid of.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah. Johnny, but can I, you probably hate me for doing this, but can I just throw in the issue of Cromwell? Cromwell came over here and is said to have taken out a very substantial number of Catholics.
Yeah,
from the massacre. It's called the massacre at Drogheda. And
that is,
I kind of feel like it goes both ways. Like they seem to be killing each other back and forth.
That is another gray issue that is blown way out of proportion. That there was a terrible between the Rome has owned Ireland almost always. For a very short period of time in the 1600s, Protestants, Puritans attempted to bring up some level of dominance and contest Roman Catholic control. And as a result of that, you had battles that there was no winner and no loser, that there were frequently atrocities committed on both sides. And it is blown out of proportion exactly that Cromwell came in and killed women and children just because they were Catholic.
Well, he did. In fairness, he did. He was the commander-in-chief of that army, and his army did.
What are your sources? He did not kill women and children just because they were Catholic. It was a battle. It was a vicious battle that was played out with little remorse, with little mercy on both sides. And the Jesuits, who own education, have done their best to make Puritan Protestant Oliver Cromwell be the bad guy because it suits them. Another great example.
Okay, but let me just say that I think that Oliver Cromwell is known.
Wait. Where are your sources? Wait. You made me bring up sources on Mein Kampf. What are your sources that show that Oliver Cromwell murdered women and children just because they're Catholic?
I was just looking at a debate through the Irish Times and other Irish periodicals.
Okay.
Which were the English and Irish newspapers batting back and forth the idea whether Cromwell did it or he didn't do it. Was he responsible for the massacre or not? However, I have a different take on it. I kind of feel that it's that he expressed this disdain for the ordinary Irish people outside the Pale. We call the Pale is the area where England and the Protestants were able to have kind of a dominion around the environs of Dublin. And outside of that, they call beyond the Pale. Inside Dublin is the Pale. And then beyond the Pale is these wilds of crazy Catholic Ireland or crazy pagan Ireland where everyone's afraid to venture. So I think he expressed a disdain for the ordinary people of Ireland, and maybe it was just that he thought they were stupid or ignorant or distasteful to him.
If you want to have a specific debate on this, you come up with some sources and give me some time to come up with some sources. In the meantime,
we'll do that. Yeah.
Opinion, and I'll give you the cui bono.
Yeah.
I'll give you the motive. Could be really along with Edward VI Prince Edward, King Edward, only real Protestant sovereigns to ever rule in England. As strong as Elizabeth and James I were in their apparent Protestantism, they still Protestants killed. They were not devout Protestant ideologues. They were simply Catholic. They were far more anti-Catholic than they were pro-Protestant. And so Oliver Cromwell and Edward VI, both of whom my book shows were murdered by Rome, Jesuits almost certainly, were the only real Protestant sovereigns ever in England. As a matter of fact, ever in the world. I can't think off the top of my head of any powerful ruler of a nation who was a devout ideologue. There may have been some who associated loosely with Protestant Christianity, but none of them, they wouldn't think to allow Edward VI to mature into becoming a king because he was raised by John Knox, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas, name off the top of my head, but that is the cui bono to why you would take a situation like the fracas in Ireland between Protestants and Catholics and really accent the apparent harm that was done, because they want to do everything they can to.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be antagonistic, and we could have a debate about it. I just feel like if you're going to get to the bottom of who's doing the evil in the world, you have to take into consideration all of those things fairly and see both sides.
I don't concede that. Another great example is the of Michael Servetus, Calvin. The Catholic Church loves to muddy the waters and say how both Protestants and Catholics burned people at the stake. There's no one that burned more innocent people at the stake than the Inquisition and the Catholic Church.
Yeah, the auto de fe. Yes, they nearly invented it.
And how would the Protestants burn people at the stake? They weren't the authority. They didn't have the power.
They had never had any power. For a very short period of time, Geneva had a Protestant influence led by John Calvin. The Counter-Reformation used a operative by the name of Michael Servetus to harass John Calvin, and then more Catholic operatives ensured that Michael Servetus ended up in Geneva, and there he was convicted by the government of the city of Geneva that had a strong Protestant influence. But again, it was all a massive psyop. Were a group of phony Protestants who had power in Geneva that came up with the ridiculous doctrine. It's actually covered in the New Testament, that says that if you really want to be a good Christian, you have to live as sinful a life as possible, because wherever there is sin, there is grace and forgiveness even more. So does that make any sense at all? That you have to be as
you're getting more into the reason why you like Protestantism over other.
Yeah, I just want to use the example of Servetus. Servetus is the one guy that was supposedly burned alive by the Protestants, and it wasn't. It was a psyop.
Okay. Yeah.
For the details of that, get my book Secret History, and we'll let it go.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe we should talk a little bit about the similarity between. I think that your idea, Johnny, of Protestantism very much matches my idea of Gnosticism, and I always notice this, but it's kind of hard to reconcile the two worlds. What
do you think is similar?
Yeah, because in the early centuries of the development of the Christian Christian religion in Palestine, and the time when the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi texts came out, or were written, supposedly written. Anyway, they were discovered in the 40s and 50s or something. But in that time, the common people who were called Gnostics were called Gnostics because they're supposed to be mystery sects and groups of people who wanted to know. And Gnostic, Gnostic, right? Gnostic, and gnosis means to know. So a Gnostic is a person who knows, one who knows. And the way you describe the Protestants in the Reformation, Johnny, kind of matches my vision that I've acquired of these Gnostics in the first centuries, where they just wanted to know God directly, just like the people of the Reformation wanted to have no priest be their intermediary to see God. The Gnostics didn't want either the Zadokine Jews or the Zealots or any of these rabbis to be their intermediary. They thought that they had the equipment, God-given equipment, their mind, their soul, to attain some kind of knowledge of God rather than have it handed to them on a plate by some authority. And I just think that the two ideas are really very close. Your view of the modern Protestant seems to match my view of the ancient Gnostic.
That's probably because my view of what a Gnostic is dramatically different from your view.
Exactly.
Gnosticism, from my understanding, is by secret knowledge. And the greatest example of Gnostics today are both the Freemasons and the Jesuits. Gnostics are a very, very, very tight clique that the common person to have the secret knowledge of salvation, whereas Protestant Christianity wants as many people as possible. The essence of how to be saved as a Christian is simple enough for a toddler to understand. Love Jesus, go to heaven. That's simple. That's it. Love Jesus, go to heaven. Don't need a priest, don't need clergy, don't need anybody else, don't need secret knowledge. Versus Gnosticism, hidden knowledge maintained by a very tight-knit group at the top of the pyramid. Not everyday.
Well, what you're terming Gnosticism is what I would term dark occultism. And I see Gnosticism in a totally different definition. I see it as the original people who wanted to know their God directly, as you say, the Reformation Protestants wanted to do.
Yeah, so it's just a different definition.
Yeah, we have different definitions, Johnny.
But it's radically different, and it's important to understand.
Yes.
I would just, you know what, if we're not going to agree on exactly what a Gnostic is, I'll just throw the word out, because I would say person having control of their own destiny is both my agenda and my understanding of the Protestant agenda. And if there is another movement that you subscribe to that shares that agenda, I won't call it Gnostic, but I will say that we absolutely are allies.
Yeah, we are on the same page. And I'm getting a lot of this from my study of the Nag Hammadi texts. And I was really inspired by John Lamb Lash's book called Not in His Image. His descriptions of the common pagans and the Gnostics matches your description of the Protestants. And in both cases, a more direct access to God was wanted or needed, or they were entitled to it because of it's their right, they're human. They don't need to have God administered to them.
In that sense, I would say that absolutely our common enemy is the structures of control in religion, and the most powerful behind the scenes is the Catholic Church, that utilizes those mechanisms of control that say you cannot be the arbiter of your own destiny. You have to rely on us, on what we tell you. You can't rely on a single source like the Bible in your family home to teach to your kids.
Yes.
You have to come to us.
Yeah, they created
for
a
your
culture of dependence and permission to be abused. And before the Catholic thing happened, you had the Talmudic Jews and the Zadokим. The Dead Sea area was full of these very zealous set of rabbis who would kill anybody who didn't agree with them, who would force their beliefs on the people with violence, with rape, with pillaging, whatever. And it's a very similar idea that and it existed before Catholicism came into play. This kind of
it existed before Judaism.
Well, the power structures of that nature existed before. Yeah.
You bet. There were nations before Judaism and before Israel that utilized that same structure. At the time of Christ, I will absolutely concede to you that is the motivation for why Jewish leadership had Christ killed. He threatened their power structure of the leadership of the not simply relying upon a relationship with Jesus and access to their scriptures, priests and Levites and scribes to tell them what to do for their own road into heaven, which is why after Jesus made that obsolete in 33 AD, within 400 years, the Roman Empire reinstituted a new version of Judaism amalgamated with paganism from Egypt, Babylon, Greece. A new structure and system of religious control.
Yes. And I think that sorry, and I think that fits, sorry, Mick.
Go ahead.
I think it fits even if you viewed the Christ idea or Jesus Christ as being not so literal, but kind of a mythicist view of the Gospels. And if you view Christ as being a personal enlightenment, which is got to by following a strict path of observance in life, and as the Gnostics did, the Middle Eastern Gnostics used to live as monks or deny the flesh, as they say, or say they are not of this world. There were various different sects. There was the Valentinians, there were the Cathars, all different kinds of groups that would follow, in general, these kind of, it was like a religion, but it was more like a seeking of the truth. They just wanted to seek the truth of God, and they didn't think there had to be an intermediary. But even if you believe that Christ, as some of these Gnostics said, was just in like the light of enlightenment coming up in you, as Santos Bonacci says, he says that Christ is, he actually says it's an oil. It's a fluid that comes up the spine, as in the Kundalini experience of energy coming up your spine and enlightenment. So Christ could also be seen as that, and even if you see it as that, there's still in the Middle East, in those first centuries around the birth of Christ, the Jesus Christ, there's still the power structures trying to put that down. You see?
Yeah. Santos Bonacci seems to be talking a lot like David Icke. I don't listen to him so frequently to make like a good judgment on him, but
out there for me. He sometimes I think he goes so deeply into his etymological analyses, and it's almost like he's just dealing with wordplay, and there's not a lot of not enough historical documentation for me, maybe, or but I don't know, but
he's more into
the idea of the Christ, being
energy.
a term for enlightenment resonates with me. It does.
No.
The problem is where do you go for that enlightenment? I don't know of any human being that once they have knowledge that empowers them, doesn't hoard that knowledge and keep it within a small group or to themselves in order to exploit it and stand on the backs of their brothers and sisters.
On the contrary, I think that on the contrary, Johnny, I think that a lot of people, when they're seeking the truth, get inspired to share it, and
no,
they don't want.
I didn't say truth. I said something that empowers.
I see what you mean. Like occult. You're talking about occultic knowledge used for dark purposes. I'm talking about direct knowledge of God, because God wants you to know Him.
Sure, and I understand that. I just don't know. This is the first time I've ever heard of that being called Gnosticism.
Okay, but it is really used that way in the Nag Hammadi texts. It's used that way.
That could be a rebranding. Yeah, and that could be a rebranding to put a happy smiley face on a very evil group of people throughout all of human history.
But it is actually a term that was used by the Greeks called gnostikoi, and they only used it as a term of derision. Like today, people use the word truther or truther for people who are truth seekers looking for the answers to these conspiracy theories, and so they used it as a derogatory term. It was like saying know-it-all.
Yeah. Well, let's not get stuck in this
topic.
Okay,
yeah, we don't want to get stuck in that question.
But I already asked Nori, why does it matter who's pulling the strings? But I would like to get to your opinion, Johnny, when you come back.
Gone.
He's coming back in a while. So yeah, I would like to ask, why does it matter who is pulling the strings? Why would we focus? Why should we focus on that?
See back?
And while he comes back, I can mention one of the first question that I got from the viewers. So the question is, does the Vatican really own the world's observatories?
They do have them. They have observatories, all right. I don't know if they own all of them.
Yeah, I don't know if they own all of them, but some of them are managed by universities, isn't it?
Yeah, well, one is in they own one that it's usually called the Lucifer one in Arizona, but that's a misnomer. It's not really called the Lucifer one. But yeah, that's one that's known.
Well, is it an acronym?
It is. It's a long acronym.
Yeah.
Who would make an acronym that long? I don't know.
Yeah, and it's not really a telescope to see stars, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a research facility.
Yeah, but it's with ultraviolet, I think.
Is that what the U is? We need Johnny for this. He's gone.
Yeah. He must have had some emergency.
He's the man with the facts. But yeah, it's yeah, there he is.
Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
Very very important. Go ahead.
So yeah, I just wanted to ask you. I already asked Nori. Why does it matter who is pulling the strings? Why would people focus on that?
It couldn't be a more critical question to ask, because if you cut off the wrong head of the Hydra, too much shall grow in its place. They frequently give up their minions in order to make people angry at the wrong source. Jews, intelligence agencies, Freemasons, bankers, all, and when I say Jews, I mean puppet people who happen to have a Jewish derivation. I do not mean all Jews. They give up their minions in order to make people angry, and they project out. There's a great line in the movie Spotlight where the guy Stanley Tucci playing the lawyer that defends the victims says, Garabedian is his name, says the church, the Catholic Church, thinks in centuries, and it absolutely does. If there should ever be any kind of uprising where the people can make headway against this system of slavery, they would gladly give up one of their minions to maintain power and control in the long run. No question is more important than who do we address as our enemy. You can get rid of every Jewish person in a position of prominence, and the structure of slavery would still be there. You could get rid of every Freemason, and that would hurt them hard, but the structure would still be there. You could get rid of the CIA, like Kennedy wanted to do, and it would hurt them badly, but the structure would still be there. If you get rid of the Jesuit-run Vatican, you cripple the entire system of enslavement. That's why it's so very important to know who the enemy is.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Yeah.
Go ahead. It's just like a chessboard for them. That they a lot of times they compare it to a chessboard because it's a Masonic game, and you have the pawns that you can say they are the Jesuits and the ones working for the Jesuits. Then you have all the other what do you call them? All the other pieces of the chessboard that are from their structure system.
You can sacrifice. You can sacrifice every piece on the board except the king. You can throw pawns out left and right, but if you're able to get a pawn all the way across the board, you can turn the pawn into the most powerful piece on the board and make the pawn a queen. Very, very much how the Catholic Church thinks in strategy. And I'm reviewing this movie Spotlight that talks about the Boston Globe investigation into priest pedophilia in Boston. And that is an excellent example of what we're talking about. The Catholic Church is allowing great scrutiny into a scandal that does it much harm, sacrificing those pieces on the chessboard in order to strengthen another piece, which is mainstream journalism. In order to
isn't that a main tenet of or a main discipline that the Jesuits are taught to accept when they become a Jesuit? They're taught that they have to just like lay down and die if that's necessary. They have to give up themselves for the greater good, for the
cause.
Yeah.
That is absolutely correct. That is part of Ignatius Loyola's spiritual disciplines, to bludgeon yourself to it. It is essentially Marine Corps boot camp. And by the way, Marine Corps boot camp is derived from the Ignatian spiritual exercises. The total destruction of self to turn the individual into a smart weapon for a quote-unquote higher cause, a higher agenda. Lay down everything that you think you want, to include your own life, in service, in loyalty. And that's exactly what they
Yes, and the Jesuit that I know, Bill, he thinks that way. He probably would.
It's the difference, and the New Testament talks about this, the difference between a slave and a bondservant. As a Protestant Christian, I say, I know who I willingly serve. I serve my will in combination with the will of Christ is what makes me a better servant, as opposed to someone that doesn't know what the end result is, someone that hasn't been briefed on what the mission is, who is told, just obey. You don't have to know what we're going to win in this war. Just obey. You're going to help us win this battle. The generals will win the war, and you have no business knowing what that means or what that's going to end up being.
And did we lose Mi'kmaq? The other thing he asked just on the side was about the Lucifer telescope. It came up.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, yeah. There's no coincidence in just how much the Jesuits have a role in observations in astronomy, in observatories. It's all part of the psyop to control our perception. One of the first things the Jesuit missionaries did when they came to a foreign nation was to insinuate themselves and take over astronomy, quote unquote science, paleontology, record keeping, mathematics. With those powerful positions, the Jesuits can and did rewrite reality.
Yeah, they rewrite our perception, and it's interesting that they use observatories, the things we use to perceive our universe. They use that to
Absolutely.
alter our
And
perception.
they maintain their positions as priests, don't they? In the same way that scientists and astronomers give us what we're supposed to be able to perceive for ourselves. We talked earlier, I mentioned earlier about the pretty clear observation you can make as a common person of how the sun and moon are the same size, and yet the priests of astronomy tell us the sun is 400 times bigger, and by coincidence 400 times further away. So it only appears. Our observations, our eyes are lying to ourselves. It's really an optical illusion. Another great example is you have the Earth 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. The solar system is moving at millions of miles an hour. The galaxy is moving at tens of millions of miles, whatever the numbers, the ridiculous numbers are. You have all this crazy movement, and yet the North Star is right there with no movement whatsoever.
Yeah.
The priests of Scientology, not science, the priests of scientism tell us that it's an optical illusion that the North Star doesn't move. It's just so very, 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 very far away.
Yeah,
it
so
has
slight,
the appearance of not moving.
Yeah, it's infinitely distant away, right? Yeah.
Right. So the Jesuits have both. They're priests of the spirit and priests of scientism, especially in astronomy. And do we think it's like, by the way, Lucifer is known as the angel of light, the bearer of knowledge, in the same way that was the deliverer of fire, which is a metaphor for knowledge, secret knowledge, the keepers of that insider secret knowledge, which we can certainly agree is occultic. And so they maintain their position as keepers. Great to have you back, Meg. As keepers of both science and religion.
Could I ask you, Johnny? Sorry, Meg. I want to just ask him one more thing.
Go ahead.
Do you think that because they have to keep their position as the priests of both perception and spirituality, perception of the world and our spirituality, so our perception of God, do you think that eventually, with the decline in what they call vocations and the decline in populations of convents and monasteries and churches, do you think that the Jesuits will try to move more into being scientists?
Oh, they have.
Will they change their structure? I'm saying, will they change their structure in such a way as to align themselves more with bodies like NASA? And I don't know. That's a question.
They don't need to. They control in secret. They control from behind the scenes. They don't need to. In fact, they don't want to. It's much better to have an organization like NASA that was founded by Jesuit-controlled Nazis and it from afar. They absolutely don't want direct control because more people will be able to see the connection and know it. That's why I think that video that we did, Mag, the picture of Lemaitre and Einstein together is just so important because it shows that hidden agenda of Jesuits and Rome and the Vatican controlling our perception of reality in science, astronomy, paleontology. Another great example I like to use is Nora, you have to give me my correct pronunciation of Teilhard, right?
Teilhard de Chardin.
Thank you. that people have no idea that he is the Jesuit priest who's considered the father of the New Age. He was also a paleontologist who was directly responsible for the Piltdown hoax. And Peking is not considered a hoax, but it almost certainly is. Peking Man. Why would a Jesuit priest involved in fabricating a hoax that was supposed to be the missing link? Because it was part of the Jesuit insinuation in science, paleontology, archaeology, astronomy, to fabricate and rewrite our reality, an alternate reality, a matrix of lies.
So was that to perpetuate the myth of evolution?
Exactly, because evolution directly attacks the reliability of the Bible. Without Darwinian dinosaurs, spinning globe Earth, heliocentric cosmic Big Bang accident, the Bible becomes a textbook. The Bible is reliable, and the Catholic Church is crippled by what the Bible says. In our reality today, people can laugh at the Bible because of dinosaurs and Darwin and spinning globe Earth, and the heliocentric cosmic accident. And that more people are vulnerable. I can't rely on the Bible. The Bible's a silly book of myths. Who do I turn to? Hey, there's a kindly Jesuit priest down the street. Let me ask him the meaning of life rather than seek it for myself.
All right.
And all of those Jesuits are themselves socially engineered and brainwashed.
So we're getting
experts, and that's an excellent point. Excellent. Hang on, I thought, Mick. That's an excellent point. There is a structure, even in the Jesuits' order, that people at the bottom are just as indoctrinated as any other soldier. And only as you climb the degrees, order of Loyola or any other secret society, are you allowed to start to think and to view and encompass what's really going on in the background. That kindly Jesuit down the street only knows that he has to give his very life in the service of an agenda that he does not understand.
Yeah, he's an order follower.
Yeah, just like the Freemasons, you have the three steps. They call it steps. They initiate, and then the two others. And most people that go into Freemasonry, they stay on those 3 levels. And they, of course, when they hear about the Freemason conspiracy, they think it's all lies because they don't know enough. They're not high enough in the hierarchy, just like the hierarchy of the Jesuits and the Vatican. So yeah, we've been running for 2 hours and 20. I just want to address some of the questions of the viewers, and so we can end it soon. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm freezing.
Call.
I have no heat in my house. I'm freezing.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, we'll end this pretty soon. So one of the first question, I already mentioned it a bit, but we can get your opinion, Johnny. So does the Vatican really own the world observatories?
I think I invite people in the audience to look up how many Jesuit-trained Roman Catholics are in the military. As I already used an example, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff repeatedly have been Jesuit-trained Catholics. Both Martin Dempsey and Joseph Dunford. One guy's an Army general, one guy's a Marine Corps general. The knighthood aspect of this really serves the propaganda and the Hegelian dialectic of this fabricated enemy of Islamic terror, who is a Green Beret and a guy who has fought for UFC, has made a couple of appearances. I've talked about this on my show, Resistance Rising, on Blog Talk Radio, has come on the Alex Jones show to talk about the threat of Islamic terror. He actually wore on one of his appearances a Crusader t-shirt with a red cross on a shield in the middle of it. This fabricated idea really controls the soldiers in the military, literal soldiers in the military. The idea that you have to do whatever it takes, even sometimes betray the best interests of your own country in order to fight this terrible battle against Islamic terror. Nothing but a fabrication, and it's amazing how many knights there are involved, deeply involved in the military. I also use the example of Walter Bedell Smith, whose nickname was Beetle, very, very powerful general during World War II, who was the first director of the CIA. George Patton hated Walter Beetle Smith, by the way, and wrote him out of his will as a pallbearer. Interesting side note, because Beetle Smith was a traitor. They at the very, very top of the hierarchy in the American military, in the Allied military, they had frequently made decisions in World War II that were counterproductive, that needlessly prolonged the war, because that's what the power structures wanted. So absolutely, there's the Vatican control, and outside of the examples that I gave, I highly recommend to you that you look up how many Jews are in powerful positions in the military versus how many knights of the Catholic Church are in powerful positions. There's a great example of a great way to destroy that debate, by the way.
Johnny, would you say that there's a funny question I always had about, because I was raised Catholic, and I then heard about all this stuff, like Jesuits running the world and all that. So the first thing that put me off it was they don't get married. How can they have inheritance, and how does that relate to the powerful families? Is it just that the powerful families utilize their institutions, and their institution is the Jesuits, and then they send certain members of their family into that institution to keep it going?
They're not supposed to get married. The Jesuits are the soldiers. The soldiers are not allowed to have offspring. They are very, very active sexually. That's the whole purpose behind the secrecy and the sexual perversion and the pedophilia and so forth. But they're not allowed to have offspring. And of course, the power families, the real power families, means red shield, like the Roman soldier. They're just a soldier from Rome. The real power families, Colonna, Farnese, De Medici, Aldobrandini, Borgia, Breakspear, these are powerful families who have also been bishops and popes in the Catholic Church. There are more than enough De Medicis who are both popes who are supposedly celibate, and other De Medicis who are not, who can carry on the family name. So
it's pronounced Medici.
And that's very interesting that now they have a series of the Medici family.
Right there.
Guys, it's pronounced Medici.
All right.
Sorry.
Look at this. An Irish woman is going to correct an Italiano.
Medici.
Posso fare l'intera cosa con italiano.
Great point. Who controls Hollywood, the Jews or the Jesuits? We now have, how many different examples, Mig, did we come up with each other on the new shows on Netflix, and one of the top prime shows on the Chief family?
Yeah, quite a few.
The Borgias. What about the Borgias? They were a big family, weren't they?
Borgias, huge cardinals and popes.
Yeah.
To this very day.
So I have here this another question from a viewer. What is your opinion on the Holocaust? What was the plan, and do you agree with the official story? Was Hitler a Jesuit puppet? Well, we already addressed that, but what is your opinion on the Holocaust?
Another smokescreen. I think that Rome has a love-hate relationship with the Jews, that Rome can very easily empower and emplace Jews who are traitors to their own people while simultaneously massacring millions of them because they have a love-hate relationship. And that makes the Jews in power that much more traitors to their own people.
But do you think it happened exactly how they said? With the 6,000, or what was the number?
I believe. Look, I don't know. I'm not an expert on the numbers. I certainly would not say that the Holocaust never happened. I would say absolutely many common Jews, it means nothing for traitor Jews in power to step back. Soros is a great example, the great millionaire who personally helped hand over property of his brother and sister Jews to the Nazis. Did anybody know that? That Soros was actually a Nazi collaborator who helped turn in property of his brother and sister Jews?
Yeah, I
what
knew
a
that.
great
And
example.
he was let off. He was let off, wasn't he?
I didn't know that, but I've seen quite recently a picture of George Soros when he was young with the SS uniform.
It is a love-hate relationship, and I absolutely have no problem agreeing with some level of validity to the Holocaust. But I'm not an expert enough, and really, who is, when our history books have been rewritten for us? I would not go as so far to say as the Holocaust never happened, and I would not doubt to believe that that is being used to discredit us. When we make a ridiculous, all-encompassing statement like the Holocaust never happened, that affects the normalcy bias of an outsider and says, you're a nut. So
yeah,
clearly
I would say
happened.
that it's being used purposely too, and because when a certain prominent flat earther started giving out videos of adulating Hitler.
Say the name. Say the name.
Okay, Eric Dubay. It's obvious.
Eric Dubay,
But
Mr.
I feel that was somehow either by his opponents or by himself that was used to discredit the flat Earth community completely.
Bingo. Bingo. Holocaust never happened. Hitler was a misunderstood guy. It's all the Jews. It's a racial issue of prejudice. Make people disconnect so you have excellent truth. I've said this before. Pardon me. The guy who turned me on to the Jesuit world order is an incognito Jesuit priest who calls himself Eric John Phelps. Eric John Phelps is one of the greatest sources of information on names, places, and dates of how the Jesuits manipulated history. And what does he do? He takes that brilliant information and destroys legitimacy of it with racism against black people. He is a self-avowed white supremacist who has changed it to a white separatist. He actually has on the flyleaf of his book when it was originally published, white supremacist. It's part of the game to give you truth and then discredit the truth.
Yeah. So it would be interesting to know. It would be interesting to know if that may have been inserted on purpose by Jesuits.
It absolutely is. Racism and prejudice is one of the most powerful tools because it gets people to disconnect their brains and run on emotion.
Yes, and that is a very emotive issue as to whether the gas chambers were real or not. Like the work of David Cole was very interesting about that. Okay, maybe there's a Holocaust, but those gas chambers weren't gas chambers. So that was very emotive for people, and people were being called total revisionists and white supremacists and anti-Semitists if they even looked at his work.
There's nothing wrong with a critical examination. Once you go to the extreme of saying the Holocaust never happened, that allows you to completely discredit not only you, but what you represent, which is exactly what Dubay, the guy that calls himself Dubay, has done.
And it ends the questioning. Did it really happen like they said it happened with the official story? No, they just want to say that it never happened. So that's the end of the story.
Mm-hmm. But it's being used as a political football is the point.
Yes, as a smokescreen of
what on earth does that have to, even if he put up those videos, what on earth does that have to do with whether there's a curvature?
There's another fantastic example of why I am so angry with so-called Christian alternative media, because all the silly crap that they talk about has no direct effect upon the common person. If they want to talk about aliens or giants or Nephilim or Bigfoot or Elvis or to the Tooth Fairy, it has no direct bearing on the lives of people who are enslaved, sick, impoverished, and have no idea who their masters are. And that's why they continue to do what they do, why they get the advertising, why they get the money, because it does no good to the common person. And the same thing as the debate as to whether or not the Holocaust ever existed. How does that help us right here, right now, figure out as slaves who are the slave masters?
Exactly.
Any other questions, Meg?
I just have to say that it's a very powerful method of division when you speak of something that was such a huge crime, even if it didn't happen the way they said it did. You create a huge, powerful division system, a theory.
We can use we can use as a metaphor so-called Pizzagate, the crimes against children. The power structures of the world run on using children as sex rags to be violated and murdered at will, and to destroy it with all kinds of propaganda in either direction is to erase it, is to allow it to continue to happen.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned the Pizzagate, I was considering if we would talk about that. Because I didn't look much through it, because it really looked like it was a topic that was promoted by the mainstream media, and their objective with it seems like it's just to make people look at one individual and one restaurant instead of a whole cult of people. And the ones that actually pay, that have the money to pay for this trafficking of kids.
It's a topic that was denied by the mainstream media, that was promoted by aspects of alternative media, and that's an excellent point, Mig, is that it is used to compartmentalize something that is far more vast. The use of children for sex slaves, for blackmail, goes far beyond some pizza joint in Washington, D.C. It runs the halls of power everywhere.
It goes back to Babylon. It goes back to Babylon and all of this occult dark.
Absolutely does. Yeah. Its references in the Bible of taking small children and burning them alive is very similar metaphorically in using children in horrible ways.
It's in every continent, and it's in every country, it's in every civilization.
And it's another example.
So it does seem a bit strange that all of a sudden everyone was focused on little James Alefantis and his pizzeria.
Because Mig hit it right on the head. It was an effort to localize a problem that is far more vast than that.
It's a good example of a Hegelian dialectic. They talk about the story and then they dismiss it to give credibility to it.
The New York Times actually addressed
saying that it's a lie. Well, then it must be true. Then this guy must be.
But it's obviously also being put into the mainstream a little more because they want to normalize pedophilia, which is sickening.
They do. Because they know at the very highest levels they already commit pedophilia, and so the more that we are open to that, the more they can mitigate our outrage. And I promise you, if there's anything I can do, I'm not going to allow that to be mitigated.
Me too.
All right, so I think that's it. Do we have any other questions? I'm seeing here on the chat very quickly if someone has other questions. I don't see anything else. Before we finish, I would just like to say that even if you don't, if you haven't researched and you don't believe that the Jesuit conspiracy is real, you can compare the Vatican with a company. That's actually a word that they like to call the Jesuits, right? The company, and the CIA also has the same name.
Oh yes.
Yes.
So yeah, if you compare the Vatican with a company, that is a company that has been in power for what, 400 years, 500 years? What other company can you compare it to that has been alive for so long and has so many lobbyists and insiders in countries and governments?
Yeah.
You can't compare
And
it to
I
anything
think that we
else.
should add also, before we close, Mig, that we're not condemning all of Catholics in the same way that we're not condemning all of Jews when we talk against Zionist projects. Because there's a lot of very good Catholics, some of whom are in our Flat Earth community and who have contributed quite a lot.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Those who are going to be some of the most vehement enemies of the machine are those who are going to be woken up to how they have been used.
Yes.
Catholics, yes. Jews, Muslims, everywhere. Those that wake up to how they have been played and used are going to vehemently fight against the machine that did that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any final words?
I would say let's just go around the horn and give out contact information. And then, Mig, if you have anything in your mind as far as future collaboration, throw that out there.
Yeah, we actually have another video coming out soon. I have been taking a bit of time to upload it, but it will be out next week, I think. And yeah, if you want to talk about your latest book, just to mention the name.
Yeah. Nora, do you have any contact stuff you want to throw out real quick?
No, I prefer not to. In fact, I'll stick with the groundwork. I'll do the groundwork.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you.
But hello to everybody in Flat Earth, like Cynthia and Martin, and shout outs. Psyche.
She's a great balance. This is really a fantastic plan that you had, Mig, and honestly, I'm glad it worked out the way it did. We had other folks that we were going to have come in, but I think this was the perfect balance and a good number, a low number, so that everybody involved can, the people involved can fight Johnny for time on, because Johnny flaps his gums. But look out for the next video that we did together on the Nazi issue that really has a tremendous amount of information in it coming out. My books, Illuminati, A Mass, Secret History, and my show, Resistance Rising on Blog Talk, and my website, johnnycirucci.com, CIRUCCI. Really, I got to say, bro, the stuff that you and I have done together has been some of the most successful that I've done, that I've had the pleasure of being a part of.
And it's been fun. I like to...
It has been fun because and everybody in this little circle here certainly makes me feel like we have a group of real truth seekers, and that the truth community is loaded with trolls that have agendas of disinformation and division. And what you said earlier, Nora, about being able to discern truth from lies, is that they know that is their most powerful weapon. And so they constantly sow truth with division and disinformation. And that's the most important skill that we could possibly have. And so I hope that us talking together allows our audience in our community to hone those skills of getting through the crap.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I highly recommend your book, because I was a bit of a doubter of the Jesuit conspiracy, and having read it, I'm quite. You put a very good case. I'm quite convinced.
Yeah,
well,
I wish we
had more.
It's a good book. I'm still reading it. I have to finish it quite soon. And yeah, I just want to say that don't believe something just because someone else is saying. Look at the facts. Look where it's pointing to. If you don't have any facts for a theory, for the Jew conspiracy, saying that Jews control everything, then there's a problem with your story, and it's a belief. It's not part of reality.
That is something we all absolutely agree on, which is question authority, and be the master of your own will. Be the master of your own destiny. We all agree on that, and that there is a power structure that has enslaved us, and we just have to figure out who that is and know how to fight it from the ground up, and be wary of people trying to take over the truth movement to distract us.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with that, with you. Yeah.
And we don't have to agree with everything. Like, I don't agree with everything you say or with what Nora says. You know, we can have different opinions, but just don't dismiss.
We're all after the same thing at the end.
Exactly. Yeah.
Taking down the power structure that's creating all the problems.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for being here with me, and maybe we'll do this some other time.
Yep. Thank you, Mick.
Thanks, guys. Okay. Thanks, Nora. Mick, really enjoyed it.
Bye, Johnny.
Take care, guys.
And thanks for the viewers to participating and giving some questions, and I'll add some more information in the description. Okay. Have a good rest of the weekend.
You too.